It's supposed to protect, watch over, and look after vulnerable children. But the service that is supposed to do just that has come under scrutiny once again. Constant failings by the British social services have been well documented and well publicised. The Institute has not learned from past mistakes to improve a system that has so far let so many young people and children down in the most abhorrent ways. The latest damning evidence against the service comes in a report by British education watchdog Ofsted. The report finds local authorities have been too slow to face up to their responsibilities in preventing child sexual exploitation, with some areas having only begun to address the issue strategically within the last 12 months, despite statutory guidance being issued more than 5 years ago, leaving those most in need abandoned, neglected, and ignored. The report was commissioned by Ofsted's Chief Inspector, Sir Michael Wilshaw, to build a clearer picture of how well local authorities and partners are working to prevent child sexual exploitation in their area, to offer protection to its victims, and to pursue and prosecute its abusers. As the Local Government Association calls the report uncomfortable reading, it will come as another blow to social services, who have come under attack for a string of scandals, convictions and resignations over organised child abuse and exploitation. Debbie Jones, Ofsted's National Director for Social Care, said it's not enough to simply wait for the next scandal to happen, and she added,
but frankly, overall, no one place has got it completely sorted.
However, today's findings by Ofsted come only a day after it was criticised for its own role in the Rotherham abuse scandal. Parliament's Communities and Local Government Committee condemned Ofsted for failing to lift the lid on child exploitation in the town despite carrying out a series of inspections of the council. As all sides play the blame game, it's the victims who will be left waiting for justice.
Now, joining us live over the phone to discuss this quite serious situation is Peter Saunders, the CEO of NAPAC, the National Association for People Abused in Childhood. Mr. Saunders, can you hear me?
Good afternoon, yes.
Good afternoon. Well, initially, the report by Ofsted is to highlight the good work local authorities are doing in preventing child sexual exploitation. But that's not been the case, has it? Are you at all surprised by the report's findings?
Sadly, I'm not at all surprised. The catastrophic number of failings that we've seen over the years continues to build up, and it isn't just councils; it's everyone. It's everywhere. And in this country, as you probably know, we have policies, procedures, and plenty of laws to protect our children. We don't need more policies, procedures, systems, or laws. Mm-hmm. We need people to implement them, to use them effectively, to ensure that our children are safe. And we have a catastrophic, as I said, list of failings in this regard, and it's time that society did something about this dreadful social issue.
Mr. Saunders, it is quite shocking to realise that these scandals, actual organised child abuse, they date back decades. Now, why hasn't this been tackled yet?
I wish I knew the answer to that. My feeling is that this is, as I say, a social evil that society, people would rather didn't exist, would rather turn their heads away from it than to deal with it. Because what people do to children is unspeakable, except that it does happen and it does need to be spoken about. But society would rather turn its back by and large. And I think at long last, thanks to the many survivors up and down the country who are coming forward with their experiences of abuse, and thanks to our many colleagues in the media who are shining a strong light on this issue. At long last, I think we're starting to see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, and that government is now beginning to take this whole issue seriously. And it's about changing the culture around child protection and about how we raise and nurture our children. And for too long, we've got it wrong, and we've failed to address these very serious issues. So hopefully, the discussion we're having right now is a step in the right direction. And as you probably know, we've recently met with the British Home Secretary to discuss these very issues and to discuss the inquiry that she set up. And we'll be going back to see the Home Secretary again next week for further conversations. And I think that's very, very important that this dialogue happens, because the leadership, and there's a huge lack of leadership everywhere around these issues, and that comes across in the Ofsted report.
Speaking of which,
that leadership has to come from the top, doesn't it?
Exactly, Mr. Saunders. Speaking of which, I mean, even it seems every time an investigation starts, another head of that investigation quits. I mean, as we know from Fiona Woolf from last month, as an example, what prompts them to quit, Mr. Saunders? I mean, is it possibly the severity of the case itself, or possibly bribery or cover-ups?
No, the reason for the two chairs who have had to step down or who have resigned from the position as chair has been because survivors, again, have pointed out the inappropriateness of their positions. Nobody's having a go at them as decent human beings. I've no doubt that both Fiona Woolf and her predecessor are decent human beings, but they both had a conflict of interest, shall we say, that would not enable them to do the job that needs doing, and therefore the Home Secretary has a very difficult decision now about appointing a third person to this chair. And in that respect, we're very happy to be assisting her in that process. But at the end of the day, she has to make the appointment, and I would hope that will happen in the coming week. But
Mr. Saunders, I mean, it seems every senior figure who does head an investigation, they step down because of a direct or an indirect affiliation to some sort of politician or a public figure. Is there anyone in a senior position not affiliated at all to these cases?
Well, in a way, you're right that it may be difficult to find somebody who has absolutely no connections with anybody who is connected with any of the establishments that are going to be looked at. But there are degrees of connectivity, if you like. There are degrees of relationships. Okay. And, with Fiona Woolf, she was clearly a friend of Leon Britton's, Lord Britton, who will almost undoubtedly be a key witness in this inquiry. Well, you cannot have that situation. So before the Home Secretary announces a new chair, she has to satisfy herself, and her department have to satisfy themselves, that they have gone through what I think we call due diligence, which is to have a thoroughly good look at these people to make sure that they haven't got any inappropriate links, such as being a personal friend of somebody who could be involved, or in the case of Lord Justice Butler Sloss, who stepped down. She stepped down not just because her brother was in the government at the time of some of this scandal back in the 80s, but she'd also made some comments about protecting the Church, the Church of England, which again compromised her position, because these inquiries have to be open and transparent, and she made it clear that she wanted to protect one of the very institutions that the inquiry she was conducting was looking at, and we can't have that.
Right. Peter Saunders, we wish you the very best of luck on your projects. Peter Saunders there, the CEO of NAPAC.